The conference room aboard the Galactic Council station gleamed with crystalline walls that shifted colors as different species moved past them. Commander Elena Vasquez sat at the long table with her team of 5 humans, all wearing their crisp diplomatic uniforms. Across from them sat representatives from dozens of alien species. But the 2 that mattered most were directly opposite her position. The Vexari representative looked like a collection of floating crystals, arranged roughly in the shape of a person. Its voice came from somewhere inside the crystalline structure, perfectly translated into English. We welcome humanity to the Galactic Council. The Accord has maintained peace for 3,000 of your years. It is our most sacred document. Next to the Vexari sat a Tharn Collective member, a massive creature covered in chitinous armor with 6 arms and eyes that glowed with a dull red light. The Tharn said nothing, but its presence filled the room with an unmistakable sense of military power. Elena smiled politely. We're honored to be here. We've waited a long time for this moment. The Vexari's crystals chimed softly, which her translator interpreted as pleasure. Excellent. The Accord document is quite comprehensive. Most species take several months to review it properly. We've prepared accommodations for your team during the deliberation period. Elena's assistant, Marcus Chun, placed a data pad on the table. That won't be necessary. We've finished our review. The room fell silent. Even species that had been chattering among themselves stopped to stare at the humans. The Vexari's crystals flickered rapidly. Impossible. The Accord is 847 pages long. It contains 17,000 individual clauses and subclauses. 847 pages, Elena confirmed. We started reading the moment you transmitted it to us 3 days ago. My team worked in shifts. We've read every word, cross-referenced every article, and analyzed every definition section. The Tharn leaned forward, its massive frame making the chair groan. You claim to understand our laws after 3 days? We have scholars who spend lifetimes studying the Accord. Elena met the Tharn's glowing eyes without flinching. We claim to have read it. Understanding will come with practice, I'm sure. But we're ready to sign. The Vexari's crystals stopped flickering entirely, which Elena had learned meant deep thought or surprise. This is highly irregular. Most species request clarifications, propose amendments, negotiate terms. We find the terms acceptable as written, Elena said. She opened her briefcase and removed a physical pen. An antique from Earth. The Accord protects member species from aggression, guarantees trading rights, and establishes clear rules for conflict resolution. That's exactly what humanity needs. For the next hour, the Council reviewed humanity's petition. Species after species voiced their approval, though many seemed surprised at how quickly the humans had moved. Finally, the Vexari stood, its crystalline form catching the light and scattering rainbows across the walls. Very well. Commander Vasquez, if you would please sign here, here, and here. Elena signed with her ancient pen, each stroke deliberate and clear. The moment she finished the 3rd signature, the Accord recognized humanity as a full member species of the Galactic Council. The room filled with the sounds of various species, expressing approval in their own ways. The Tharn stood and approached Elena. Up close, it towered over her by at least 3 feet. Welcome to the Council, human. We hope you will be as enthusiastic about following the Accord as you were about signing it. Oh, we will be, Elena assured it. Following rules is something humans take very seriously. 2 months later, human mining operations were in full swing across the 12 systems the Council had allocated to them. Massive ships pulled rare minerals from asteroid fields. Construction crews built stations in orbit around lifeless planets. The human expansion was efficient, organized, and entirely legal under the Accord's provisions. Then the Tharn Collective's fleet arrived. Elena stood on the bridge of the human station in the Kepler 442 system, watching the tactical display as 30 Thorn warships emerged from faster-than-light travel. They were massive vessels, each one bristling with weapons that could level a city. They formed a blockade formation around the human mining colony. "Ma'am, they're hailing us," said the communications officer. "Put them through." The view screen showed a Thorn commander, even larger than the one she'd met at the council. Its armor was decorated with marks that probably indicated military victories. "Humans, the Thorn Collective has decided we require these systems. You will evacuate within 1 standard week." Elena clasped her hands behind her back. These systems were allocated to humanity by the Council. The Accord guarantees our rights here. "The Accord also prohibits warfare," the Thorn commander said, spreading its 6 arms in what might have been a smile. "You are a young species with a small fleet. We are the Thorn Collective. Do the mathematics. So you're threatening us? I am stating reality. You cannot defend these systems. You cannot win a war against us. Therefore, you will leave." Elena took a slow breath. Under the Accord, member species are protected from aggression. If you attack us, every species in the Council will be obligated to embargo you. Your entire economy would collapse. The Thorn commander's eyes glowed brighter. "We will not fire first, but neither will we leave. Eventually, you will run out of supplies. Eventually, you will have to abandon these systems. And we will simply wait for that day." The transmission ended. Elena stood quietly for a moment, then turned to her staff. "Get me Marcus and the legal team. It's time to see just how well we read that Accord." 3 hours later, human merchant vessels began moving into position around every Thorn warship. These weren't military vessels. The Accord was very specific about what constituted a warship, and these didn't qualify. They were civilian craft, registered for cargo transport and mining operations. Each one was also equipped with industrial-grade tractor beams, docking clamps, and electromagnetic pulse generators used for clearing space debris. All perfectly legal tools for civilian operations. The Thorn fleet found itself surrounded by dozens of human ships that, while unarmed, were actively preventing them from moving freely. Each time a Thorn vessel tried to adjust its position, human ships would activate their tractor beams not as weapons, but as collision avoidance systems as defined in Accord Article 203. The Thorn commander hailed Elena again. "What are you doing?" "Operating our civilian vessels," Elena replied calmly. "The Accord guarantees freedom of movement in neutral space. Our ships are simply going about their business. You are blocking our fleet." "Are we? We're just maintaining safe distances using our tractor beams. Standard protocol to prevent accidents. I'd hate for one of your warships to accidentally collide with our civilian vessels. That would require a full investigation under Article 319. The Thorn commander's eyes blazed with fury. "You cannot win this way. We will wait. We will not move. And when your supplies run out, we will still be here." "Maybe," Elena agreed. "But every day you stay, you're accumulating navigational fees under Article 205, and your ships are creating environmental hazards, exotic particle emissions from your engines. That's Article 672. We'll need to file reports with the Council, of course, and request inspections. And probably some compensation for the ecological damage studies we'll need to conduct." The transmission ended again, but this time Elena smiled. The standoff had begun, and humanity was playing a very different game than the Thorn expected. The standoff entered its 2nd week, and the Thorn Collective was discovering that patience had a price. Every hour their fleet remained in orbit around human colonies, humanity filed new complaints with the Galactic Council. Environmental impact violations, space traffic disruptions, hazardous material storage concerns. Each complaint was technically valid. Each one required formal review. And each one generated costs that the Tharn had to cover under council regulations. Marcus Chun sat across from Elena in her office. Datapads spread across the desk between them. The council has logged 417 separate complaints from us in the past 10 days. The Vexari arbitrators are starting to get annoyed. Good, Elena said, not looking up from her reading. Annoyed means they're paying attention. What's the status of our humanitarian supply runs? The Tharn tried to intercept the last 3 convoys. Each time, our ships invoked Article 45 right of humanitarian passage. They had to let us through. Elena finally looked up. Did our ships broadcast their navigational hazard warnings? Marcus grinned. Every single time. Electromagnetic pulse bursts, exactly as specified in Article 203 for debris clearing operations. Complete coincidence that the pulses temporarily disabled Tharn targeting systems for several hours each time. Unfortunate coincidence, Elena corrected. Make sure that's in the report. We're very concerned about these technical difficulties and are investigating the cause. A chime at the door interrupted them. Come in, Elena called. A young lieutenant entered, looking nervous. Ma'am, we have a situation. The Tharn have deployed boarding parties. They're attempting to seize Station 7 with ground troops. Elena stood immediately. Time to arrival? They've already docked. 50 Tharn warriors are breaching the airlocks now. Marcus grabbed his datapad. That's Article 12 violation military action against civilian installations. Only if we can prove they're military, Elena said, already moving toward the door. Get me a secure line to Station 7, and someone find me the Accord's definition of military versus security personnel. If they're not carrying energy weapons, they might argue they're just security contractors. The next hour became a masterclass in creative engineering. Station 7's human crew had been preparing for this possibility since the standoff began. The moment Tharn warriors breached the first airlock, they found themselves in a corridor where gravity suddenly stopped working. Tharn physiology wasn't adapted for zero-gravity combat. Their heavy armor and six-limbed bodies needed something to push against, while the warriors floated helplessly. Trying to reorient themselves, the station's atmosphere system engaged. The air didn't evacuate. That would have been lethal and illegal. Instead, it flooded with what the manifest listed as Industrial Decontamination Agent 7B, a non-lethal compound used for cleaning mining equipment. In humans, it caused mild eye irritation. In Tharn, it triggered violent nausea. The human security contractors arrived 15 minutes later, armed with nets and stun batons that were classified as livestock management tools, not weapons. They efficiently captured all 50 Tharn warriors, while the aliens retched and floated helplessly in zero gravity. Elena watched the footage later, her face carefully neutral. Any casualties? 3 Tharn with minor injuries from flailing into walls, the station commander reported. All have received medical attention. We filed incident reports under Article 401 workplace safety violations during unauthorized entry. And the investigation? The Council has assigned a Vexari arbitrator. They'll arrive in 4 days to review the incident. Until then, the Tharn warriors are our guests, receiving medical care and proper food according to Council detention standards. Elena nodded slowly. Make sure they're comfortable. And make sure every single regulation is followed exactly. Document everything. The Tharn responded by deploying boarding parties to 3 more stations simultaneously. Each time they encountered similar problems. Gravity failures, atmosphere complications, automated systems that seemed to malfunction in precisely the worst possible ways. And always, human security contractors waiting with nets and stun batons. After the 4th failed boarding attempt, The Tharn Collective filed their own complaints with the Council. They claimed humanity was deliberately sabotaging station systems to harm Tharn personnel. They demanded immediate sanctions. The Vexari arbitrator who reviewed the case was a different crystal being than Elena had met before, but its voice carried the same tone of logical precision. Commander Vasquez, the Tharn allege that your stations are unsafe and that these malfunctions are deliberate. Our stations are industrial facilities, Elena explained. They're designed for human workers in predictable conditions. When 50 armed aliens force their way through airlocks, systems sometimes malfunction. We're conducting full safety reviews of every facility and implementing additional safeguards. We take worker safety very seriously. The Tharn claim you're using these malfunctions as weapons. Article 156 defines directed kinetic weapons, energy weapons, and biological weapons. Our stations have none of these. What we have are aging gravity plates, sensitive atmosphere systems, and industrial safety equipment. If the Tharn believe our facilities are unsafe for their personnel, perhaps they should stop illegally boarding them. The arbitrator's crystals flickered. The Tharn argue they were securing the stations for safety inspections. Elena pulled up a document on her data pad. Under Article 401, safety inspections must be requested in advance and conducted by certified council inspectors. The Tharn sent armed warriors through airlocks by force. That's not an inspection. That's an invasion. The case was still under review, but the message was clear. The Tharn couldn't win on the ground any more than they could in space. By week 3, the Tharn strategy shifted again. If they couldn't take the stations by force and couldn't starve the humans out, perhaps they could simply make the entire operation too expensive to maintain. They began filing counter-complaints for every human action. Improper docking procedures, unauthorized use of electromagnetic equipment, space traffic violations. For every complaint humanity filed, the Tharn filed 10. They assumed the young species would eventually run out of legal resources to fight back. They were wrong. Elena stood before her assembled legal team, a room full of 50 human lawyers who had been recruited from Earth, specifically for this operation. The Tharn have filed 11,000 complaints in the past week. They think they can overwhelm us with paperwork. A senior attorney named Sarah Kim stood up. We've reviewed all 11,000. 93% are duplicate filings with minor wording changes. 7% are legitimate concerns that we can address quickly. We've prepared responses to all of them. How long until filing? We submitted them 20 minutes ago. Elena felt something like pride swell in her chest. And our countersuits? Another attorney answered. 15,000 and counting. We've documented every single council regulation the Tharn fleet has violated since arriving. Navigation fees, emission standards, safety protocols, proper diplomatic procedures. We've also filed on behalf of 12 other species who have asked us to represent them in historical grievances against the Tharn. Marcus looked up from his datapad. We're not fighting the Tharn's legal war anymore. We're running our own campaign, and they're just reacting to us. Elena walked to the window, looking out at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the Tharn fleet was still waiting, still trying to understand how they'd lost control of a situation they'd thought they dominated. Send a message to Earth. Tell them to increase law school enrollment. We're going to need more attorneys. You think this will last that long? Marcus asked. I think we've just shown the galaxy that there's a new way to fight, Elena said. And I think everyone's been watching very carefully. 6 months into the standoff, the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with an energy it hadn't felt in centuries. Species from across the galaxy had sent representatives, all of them wanting to witness what was being called the human question. Elena Vasquez walked through the massive doors with Marcus at her side. Aware that every eye in the room was on them, The HFY chief arbitrator stood at the center podium, its crystalline form larger and more complex than any Elena had seen before. This council convenes to address the ongoing situation between humanity and the Thon Collective. 6 months have passed, and the conflict shows no sign of resolution. The Thon representative rose from its seat, the same warrior who had commanded the blockade fleet. The humans have made a mockery of the accord. They hide behind technicalities and legal manipulation. They use our own rules as weapons against us. A murmur ran through the chamber. Elena remained still, her face neutral. They file thousands of frivolous complaints. The Thorn continued. They claim every accident is our fault, every malfunction is our responsibility. They have turned the sacred accord into a tool of harassment. This cannot be what the founders intended. Other species voiced their agreement. The Krell, the Montauk, even the peaceful Darasi seemed concerned. The Vaxari raised a crystalline limb for silence. Commander Vasquez, how do you respond to these allegations? Elena stood, smoothing her uniform. The Accord is a legal document. It establishes rules for interaction between species. We have followed every single one of those rules. If the Thon find that inconvenient, perhaps they should reflect on why following the rules is problematic for them. You twist the meaning of the rules, the Thon shouted. You use industrial equipment as weapons. You hide military actions behind civilian classifications. You, Article 156, subsection 3, Elena interrupted calmly. Would you like me to recite it? A weapon is defined as any device designed, manufactured, or deployed with the primary purpose of causing harm to living beings or property. Our industrial equipment has the primary purpose of mining and construction. That some of this equipment can also be used defensively doesn't change its classification. The Vexari's crystals chimed thoughtfully. The Accord does make that distinction. Because the distinction matters, Elena continued. If you classify every tool that could theoretically cause harm as a weapon, then tractor beams are weapons. Docking clamps are weapons. Atmosphere systems are weapons. The entire framework of civilian space travel collapses. A small species called the Prill stood up, their representative barely 3 feet tall. The humans represented us in our border dispute with the Thorn. For the first time in 50 years, we received a fair hearing. The humans asked for nothing in return. Another voice joined in. This one from the reptilian Sorn. They helped us file proper environmental complaints against Thorn mining operations that were poisoning our water worlds. Operations that had been illegal for decades, but we lacked the legal expertise to challenge them. More species stood, one after another. The Trellics, the Bach, the Harmony Singers. 23 species in total, all of them sharing similar stories. Humanity had offered legal assistance, trained their representatives in council procedures, helped them navigate the Accord's complex provisions. Always for minimal cost, sometimes for free. The Thon representative's eyes blazed with fury. You see? They build coalitions against us. They turn the council into a weapon aimed at the Thon Collective. No, said a new voice. The Vexari chief arbitrator's crystals pulsed with an intensity Elena had never seen before. They have simply revealed that the Accord was always a weapon. The question is, who wields it? The chamber fell absolutely silent. The Vexari continued, its voice resonating through the space. For 3,000 years, the Accord has maintained peace. But it has been a peace that favored the strong. Species like the Tharn could ignore minor violations because smaller species lacked the resources to file proper complaints. They could threaten and intimidate because the cost of legal defense was too high for most civilizations. The Accord protected everyone in theory, but in practice, it protected those with power. The Thong representatives started to speak. But the Vexari raised a limb for silence. Humanity did not break the accord. They did not bend it. They simply used it exactly as written, with a thoroughness and persistence that we had never seen before. And in doing so, they exposed a fundamental truth. The accord only protects people when it is actively enforced. Elena felt her heart racing but kept her expression calm. This was the moment everything would be decided. The Tharn Collective violated the accord the moment they blockaded human space to force an evacuation, the Vexari stated. They violated it again with unauthorized boarding actions. They violated it repeatedly by attempting to use military force to bypass legal processes. Humanity's response was to use legal processes. Nothing more. The Tharn representative slammed its fist on the desk, then changed the accord. Ban these tactics. Restrict legal filings. Set limits on what? Elena asked quietly, but her voice carried through the chamber. On filing legitimate complaints? On seeking arbitration for actual violations? On protecting our citizens through legal means? If you ban those things, you're not banning weapons. You're banning justice. She turned to address the full council. The accord has 17,000 clauses because space is complicated. Because interactions between species are complicated. Because peace requires detailed rules that account for countless situations. But all those rules mean nothing if only the powerful have the resources to use them. Marcus handed her a datapad, and she held it up. My team has drafted a proposal. We call it the Legal Defense Corps Amendment. It establishes a council-funded organization to help all member species access the Accord's protections. Free legal training, assistance with filing procedures, arbitration support. Everything we've been providing informally, now made official and available to everyone. The Vexari's crystals flickered rapidly. This is a significant proposal. It's a necessary one, Elena said. Right now, following the accord requires expertise that most species don't have. It requires resources that small civilizations can't afford. That's not peace. That's just organized bullying with rules the bullies ignore. For 3 hours, the council debated. Species argued about funding, about implementation, about whether humanity's methods had been appropriate. But underneath all the debate was a simple reality that everyone in the chamber understood. The old way of doing things had been exposed as inadequate. Finally, the Vexari called for a vote. All in favor of establishing the Legal Defense Corps as outlined in the human proposal? The vote wasn't unanimous, but it didn't need to be. 67% of the council voted in favor. The accord would be amended. The Tharn representative stood one last time. This is a mistake. You give humans and their allies too much power. No, the Vexari said. We give everyone equal access to power that already existed. The humans simply showed us it was there. As the council session ended, Elena found herself surrounded by representatives from dozens of species, all wanting to discuss legal matters, to ask for advice, to thank humanity for what they'd done. Marcus leaned close and whispered, "We just changed galactic civilization." "Maybe," Elena whispered back. "Or maybe we just forced it to live up to its own rules." The Tharn fleet withdrew from human space the next day. Not because they'd been defeated in battle, but because the cost of continuing the legal fees, the arbitration judgments, the sanctions for repeated violations had become unsustainable. They left quietly, without ceremony, and humanity's mining operations continued, undisturbed. But the real change was just beginning. 3 years after the standoff ended, Elena Vasquez stood in the lecture hall on the Galactic Council station, looking out at an audience that would have been unimaginable when humanity first joined the council. 200 students from 47 different species filled the seats, all of them enrolled in the first Legal Defense Corps training program. The Accord's Article 523 covers resource extraction disputes, Elena explained. The translator matrix, ensuring every species heard her words in their own language. But most people miss the subsection that defines reasonable environmental impact. Can anyone tell me what the key word is in that definition? A young Prill raised their small hand. Reversible? Exactly. Any environmental change must be reversible within 10 standard years, or it requires additional permits and environmental bonds. This is how you stop a larger species from strip mining your home world and claiming it's legal. Marcus watched from the back of the room, noting how different this was from their early days. Elena had become more than a negotiator. She'd become a teacher. Humanity's accidental revelation that the Accord could be weaponized had transformed into something more constructive. Now they were teaching everyone else how to defend themselves. After the lecture, a Thorn student approached Elena's desk. She recognized the distinctive armor markings. This one was from a warrior family. The student seemed nervous. "Commander Vasquez, may I ask a question?" "Of course. And you can call me Elena. My people see me as a traitor for studying here," the Thorn said quietly. "They believe I'm learning to fight against my own kind." Elena set down her datapad and gave the student her full attention. "Are you?" "I don't know. I just think what happened 3 years ago showed that my people were wrong. We thought strength meant military power. But humans proved that knowledge of rules is also strength. Maybe stronger. Not stronger," Elena corrected gently. "Different. Military power has its place. The Accord recognizes legitimate defense. But military power without respect for law becomes tyranny. Law without the ability to enforce it becomes meaningless. The goal is balance." The Thorn student's eyes less aggressive red than their warrior kin met Elena's. "Do you hate us? For what we tried to do to your people?" Elena considered the question carefully. "I hated the situation. I hated that your leaders thought they could bully us. But individual Thorn? No. You're here because you want to understand the system better. That's not betrayal, that's growth. Your people will be stronger for it." Later that evening, Elena met with the Legal Defense Corps' leadership in a conference room that had become their informal headquarters. The group included humans, but also Vesari, Prill, Sorn, and representatives from a dozen other species. They'd become a real coalition, united by the belief that the Accord should protect everyone equally. "We have 43 new requests for assistance," reported a Vexari coordinator named Crystal Mind of 7. "Most are from species in the outer regions who are facing resource disputes with established civilizations." "Can we handle that many?" Marcus asked. "We'll need to prioritize," Elena said, reviewing the list on her datapad. "Which cases involve immediate threats to civilian populations?" 7 of them, Crystal Mind of 7 replied. "Pikal are facing water supply contamination from unauthorized mining. The Breen colony is being blockaded illegally. The Trosses are dealing with forced relocations." Elena highlighted those cases. "These 3 first. We deploy legal teams immediately and file emergency arbitration requests. The others we can handle through standard procedures." A human attorney named David Walsh spoke up. "Elena, we're doing good work here, but we need to talk about the bigger picture. We've handled over 6,000 cases in the past 3 years. The pattern is clear. Most conflicts in the galaxy stem from large species not following Accord provisions when dealing with smaller ones." "That's always been true," Elena said. "Right, but now we can quantify it. Now we have data. And that data suggests we need something more than just legal defense. What are you thinking?" David projected a chart showing case outcomes. "Look at these patterns. When we get involved early, most disputes resolve quickly and fairly. When we get involved late, It takes months or years and causes massive damage. We need a prevention system, not just a reaction system. Crystal Mind of Seven's form brightened. An early warning system for accord violations. We monitor known pressure points, identify situations where conflicts are likely to develop, and intervene before they escalate. That's a lot of monitoring, Marcus noted. Some species might see it as surveillance. It would be transparent, David argued. Public data, publicly analyzed. We're not spying. We're applying data analysis to prevent conflicts before they start. Elena thought about it, then shook her head. Not yet. Right now, we're trusted because we respond to requests. We don't initiate. We don't push. If we start monitoring everyone and showing up uninvited, even with good intentions, we'll be seen as controlling. We'll become what we fought against. The room fell quiet. David looked disappointed but nodded. You're probably right. It just feels like we could do more. We are doing more, Elena said. 3 years ago, most species in this galaxy didn't know their own rights under the Accord. They didn't know how to file complaints or seek arbitration. They didn't know that the rules could protect them. Now, we're training hundreds of legal defenders. We've handled thousands of cases. We've shown that the system works when people use it. But the Tharns still have their fleet, Marcus pointed out. The Montauk still control twice the territory the Accord technically allows. The Krell still manipulate trade agreements to their advantage. The big problems haven't gone away. No, Elena agreed. But now the small species have tools to address those problems. Change doesn't happen overnight. It happens through 1,000 small victories that eventually add up to something bigger. 6 months later, Elena received an unexpected communication. The Tharn Collective requested a meeting, not to file a complaint, but to discuss a partnership. The meeting took place on neutral ground, a council diplomatic station. The Tharn representative was the same commander who had blockaded human space 3 years earlier. Its armor was different now, less militaristic, marked with symbols Elena had learned indicated diplomatic rather than military service. Commander Vasquez, the Tharn said, inclining its head in what passed for a respectful greeting among its people. Thank you for accepting this meeting. I'm curious about what the Tharn Collective wants to discuss, Elena replied carefully. Partnership. The collective has conducted extensive internal reviews of our past practices. We have concluded that our approach to galactic relations was insufficient. That's a diplomatic way to put it. Yes, we are attempting. Diplomacy now. The Tharn's eyes flickered with something that might have been humor. We wish to fund 10 additional positions in the legal defense course. Positions that would be filled by Tharn citizens trained in your methods. Elena kept her expression neutral, though she was surprised. Why? Because the galaxy is changing, and we must change with it. Our military strength is still considerable, but it means less now than it did before. Your species proved that power has many forms. We prefer to develop new forms rather than become irrelevant. This isn't about redemption? Elena asked. No, this is about survival. But perhaps survival and redemption can overlap. Elena thought about the Tharn student in her class, about the slow changes she'd seen in galactic culture, about the fact that even the most militaristic species were starting to see value in understanding rules rather than just breaking them. I'll bring your proposal to the Corps' leadership, she said finally. But I have a condition. Name it. The Tharn citizens you send to train with us don't get any special treatment. They start as students like everyone else. They learn like everyone else. And they earn their positions through merit, not because the collective funded them. The Tharn commander's eyes glowed with what Elena had learned to recognize as approval. Acceptable. We would expect nothing less from humans. As Elena left the meeting, Marcus was waiting outside. How did it go? The Thon want to join what we started, Elena said, still processing it. They're actually asking to be part of the solution. Did we win then? Elena looked out the window at the stars beyond, thinking about all the species, learning to use the Accord, all the cases being resolved peacefully, all the small changes that were gradually reshaping galactic civilization. We didn't win, she said finally. We just read the manual everyone else had been ignoring. And now everyone else is reading it too. That's not victory. That's just basic literacy finally catching on. Marcus laughed. Only you would call reshaping galactic civilization basic literacy. It is, though. The rules were always there. The protections were always available. We just had to be stubborn enough to use them. Stubborn, Marcus repeated. Yeah, that sounds like humanity. Elena smiled. It does, doesn't it? They walked back toward the Legal Defense Corps' offices, where hundreds of students from dozens of species were learning that rules weren't chains to be escaped. They were tools to be mastered. And in that lesson, simple as it seemed, lay the seed of something humanity had always known but the galaxy was just discovering. That civilization wasn't about who had the biggest guns, but about who had the patience to read the fine print and the determination to make sure it meant something. Humanity didn't break the rules. They didn't even bend them. They just proved that rules were only as strong as the will to use them, and humans were very, very stubborn about using every tool available.